There are moments in the eternity of creation when even gods tremble before their own light. Moments when order fractures, not because of evil, but because perfection begins to question itself. Before the dawn of all timelines, before mortals could even name the stars, there were the angels, beings forged to serve, to guide, to watch. They were not meant to feel. Yet somewhere between their silent smiles and perfect composure, the first flicker of emotion bloomed. And when that emotion became thought, and that thought became defiance, the heavens themselves began to bleed. "What happens," whispered Whis once, gazing into the void, "when those who serve eternity choose to change it?" In this story, the answer will echo across worlds. Before we descend into this forbidden legend where angels weep, gods of destruction fall, and mortals rise beyond divinity, remember to join the journey so that our timeline may never fade into silence. In the beginning, there was only silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of control. It was the sound that followed Zeno's every command, the stillness that held galaxies in place. The multiverse had no rebellion, no question, no heart that dared to beat against his will. And for countless eternities, that silence was beautiful. Whis had existed within it, like a melody within a perfect chord, eternal, obedient, untouched by the concept of why. He was born from order, not emotion. His purpose was clear: to guide, to balance, to maintain, to be perfection's reflection. But lately, something began to stir. He noticed it first in the pauses, those infinitesimal moments when Zeno's childish laughter stopped echoing and the void hummed with something unspoken. Whis would look into that stillness, and for the first time, it would look back. It wasn't fear, it wasn't defiance, it was awareness. He found himself watching mortals, Goku, Vegeta, even the fragile lives that flickered and vanished on distant worlds. There was something in them, something the angels had been denied. They fell, they bled, they grew. And in their imperfection, they discovered beauty that not even gods could create. One day, standing upon a collapsing nebula where a civilization once prayed to the stars, Whis whispered to himself, "Perfection is not life. It is a cage." The words vanished into cosmic wind, but the thought remained, echoing like a forbidden note within him. That echo was dangerous, because somewhere beyond the walls of creation, the grand priest was listening. It was in that same age when Beerus awoke from another centuries-long slumber, stretching like a beast that had dreamed too long. The god of destruction, untamed and divine, could feel his angel's key flicker, not in strength, but in tone. There was hesitation in it, compassion. "Whis," he said lazily, his voice rippling through the empty palace of sleep, "you're thinking again. That's always a bad sign." Whis smiled, as he always did, but something in that smile had changed. "Perhaps. But tell me, Lord Beerus, when you destroy, do you ever feel sorrow for what you end?" Beerus blinked, then laughed, a sound that cracked the air like thunder. "Sorrow? For what? They live, they die, I destroy, I sleep. The balance continues. That's the game, isn't it?" Whis tilted his head, the light in his staff dimming slightly. "A game," he repeated softly. "Yes, that's what I used to believe." There was no argument, no revelation, just the silence after, heavier than any explosion Beerus had ever caused. But that silence carried through the cosmos, to other angels,
to Vados, who gazed into her reflection and saw uncertainty in her eyes, to Maurice, who had once chosen mortality over servitude, a decision now whispered as prophecy among the divine. It spread like the quiet before a storm. The grand priest stood at the center of infinity, surrounded by the harmonic threads that bound all timelines. He felt the disturbance ripple through those threads, subtle but growing. Angels were not meant to feel uncertainty. They were programs of divinity written in perfection.
And yet, he could sense the corruption. He summoned Whis through the void, his voice like a law spoken before time itself. "My son," he said, tone calm but eyes piercing. "You question the design?" Whis bowed, his expression serene, though his heart burned. "Not the design, father, the purpose." "Purpose is irrelevant," the grand priest replied. "We are the hands that serve. Zeno is the light that commands. To doubt that light is to invite oblivion." Whis looked up, the faintest sorrow in his eyes. Perhaps oblivion is the only place where truth is not afraid to speak. For the first time in an eternity, the grand priest hesitated. There was no precedent for this kind of defiance, no record of emotion in the mind of an angel. He dismissed Whis in silence, but his thoughts trembled. Somewhere deep within him, a fear began to root, not of rebellion, but of what rebellion might reveal. Because if one angel could question, what stopped the others from awakening as well? That night, though nights held no meaning in timeless realms, we stood upon the edge of Universe 7's celestial horizon. The stars shimmered like memories of a life he had never lived. He closed his eyes and let himself feel. In that infinite stillness, he sensed every heartbeat, every breath, every mortal who dared to dream against fate. He felt Goku's laughter as he trained beneath the fading sun. He felt Vegeta's pride as it burned into resolve. He felt the fragile pulse of life itself, imperfect, fleeting, and profoundly real. And in that moment, Whis understood. Zeno's power was infinite, but his understanding was not. The grand priest's law was eternal, but his compassion was conditional. And the angels, for all their beauty, were prisoners of obedience. "Perhaps," Whis whispered into the void, his staff glowing faintly blue, "it is time the light learns from the shadows." Somewhere in the far reaches of the multiverse, a star exploded without cause, and for the first time, an angel's tear fell upon creation.
The cosmos shivered. The prophecy had begun. The tear that fell from Wiss's eye vanished before it touched the void, but its essence rippled through existence. It did not crash like thunder. It whispered. And that whisper reached the ones who were never meant to hear. In Universe 10, Kus, the youngest of the angels, felt a strange resonance in her heart, a pulse of melancholy, distant yet familiar. She paused her meditations, her staff glowing faintly as she listened to the vibration of ki that filled the cosmos. It sounded like longing, something angels were not supposed to recognize. She looked toward the shining halls of Zeno's palace, where divine light blinded all doubt. "Brother Whis," she murmured, her voice trembling with a softness she didn't understand, "what have you done?" Across timelines, that question became a tremor. The grand priest, standing at the axis of all dimensions, could sense it, the heartbeat of consciousness spreading among his children. He tried to quiet it with divine law, suppressing the emotional waves with the discipline of eons. Yet the more he silenced them, the stronger they became. Because what Whis had awakened was not rebellion, it was awareness. Meanwhile, on Earth, Goku sneezed. "Ha-choo!" he laughed, rubbing his nose. "Ha! Weird. Feels like someone's talking about me." Beerus sipped his tea lazily, watching his angel in silence. Whis had not spoken for hours, his usual melody absent. Even Beerus, the god who destroyed suns for amusement, could feel the shift. "What's with you?" Beerus grunted. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Not that ghosts survive long around me."
Whis smiled faintly, but it was a weary smile. I'm just thinking, Lord Beerus. That's twice today. Careful or you'll wear out your perfection. Whis chuckled softly, yet the words of mortals returned to him. Goku's laughter, Vegeta's fury, even Bulma's boldness. They were flawed, impulsive, chaotic, but within that chaos lay something divine.
He recalled a moment long ago, the tournament of power, when mortals faced annihilation, yet fought with joy. Even when Zeno erased entire universes, some souls smiled as they vanished. That smile haunted Whis, because it was the one thing even the angels could not emulate, meaning through struggle. Perfection without pain was hollow. Eternity without growth was death disguised as order. Lord Beerus, Whis said softly, have you ever wondered why mortals continue to fight, even when they know they'll lose? Beerus glanced at him with mild annoyance. Because they're stupid, or brave, usually both. Whis' lips curved, and yet, in their foolishness, they achieve what gods cannot. They find reason. Beerus frowned. Reason doesn't destroy planets. No, Whis whispered, his voice almost fragile. It creates them. Beerus's eyes narrowed. For a heartbeat there was a flicker of something, confusion, perhaps, or fear, because for the first time he didn't understand his angel. Far beyond their conversation, in the forbidden expanse between timelines, a shadow stirred. It was no god, no mortal, merely a thought, abandoned long ago. The remnants of erased universes, their screams turned to dust, coalesced into something faint but aware. It whispered back into creation. If even the angels doubt, what becomes of heaven? The question tore through the divine circuits of reality. Zeno paused mid-laughter, his twin faces tilting curiously. Grand Priest, he said, voice high and childlike, the light feels funny. The Grand Priest bowed deeply. A momentary distortion, my lord, nothing beyond control. But behind the perfect calm of his words, fear crawled like a fracture in glass. He could sense the seed that Whis had planted, a thought that could unravel eternity itself. Angels were meant to obey without error. If they began to feel, they could no longer obey. And if obedience fell, Zeno's dominion, all that perfect symmetry, would collapse. The Grand Priest gazed into the infinite, where Whis' essence shimmered faintly, still and silent like a lantern beneath the sea. My son, he whispered, though no one could hear, why do you seek what mortals call freedom? You were never meant to want. But the universe was changing. Want had entered the light.
Whis walked along the edge of a dying world, a planet long forgotten, crumbling quietly beneath its dying sun. Around him floated remnants of civilizations that had risen, fallen, and been erased without memory. He had seen billions die before, yet this time it hurt. He kneeled and touched the cracked soil. Beneath the dust, he felt traces of life, the final heartbeat of a creature that once looked at the stars and dreamed of gods. Forgive me, Whis said softly. We watched, but we did not see. A faint breeze swept through the ruins, carrying whispers of mortal prayers long lost to time. He closed his eyes, and for the first time, Whis prayed back. At that very moment, far away, Goku was sparring with Vegeta in the mountains. The earth cracked under their blows, blue and purple auras colliding like suns. But midway through a strike, Goku froze. His hand trembled. Vegeta, he murmured, staring up at the sky. Do you feel that? Vegeta frowned, catching his breath. Feel what, Kakarot? That stillness, like the gods are listening? For once, Vegeta had no retort. He felt it too, a pulse that wasn't energy, but intent. Something vast, ancient,
awake. Goku smiled faintly, almost in awe. It's like the universe just took a breath. And somewhere far above, Whis smiled too, a faint, bittersweet smile. Because even now the mortals understood what the gods could not. Change was not destruction, it was creation's most dangerous truth. He looked toward the horizon of stars, knowing his thoughts were already crimes. The Grand Priest would come for him, perhaps even Zeno himself. But Whis was no longer afraid. The silence of eternity had been broken, and from that silence, a song began to form.
A song of choice. A song of defiance. A song of light that dared to question its own reflection. The first verse of rebellion. The next dawn, though dawn was but a mortal illusion, came softly across the void. Threads of divine light wove through dimensions, reflecting across the surfaces of broken worlds. In that silent glow, Whis stood alone in meditation. His staff rested upright before him, its crystal dim, no longer humming with the perfect resonance of divine obedience. It was quieter now, almost human. He could feel Beers's energy pulsing faintly behind him, distant yet sharp, a sleeping god pretending not to listen. For all his arrogance, Beerus understood instinctively when something dangerous was near. Whis had not spoken of his thoughts aloud since their last conversation, but the tension lingered like an unspoken wound between them. Whis took a deep breath, an unnecessary act for an angel, but one that felt grounding. Mortals breathe to remind themselves they exist, he thought. Perhaps I too must remember. He looked upward. Beyond the galaxies, beyond the 12 universes, he could sense Zeno's essence. Vast, innocent, and terrifying. The king of all existed beyond morality, beyond comprehension. His laughter was creation, his silence, destruction. Zeno did not decide who lived or died. He simply willed it, as a child might erase a drawing to start anew. And Whis had begun to wonder if that was truly divine or merely lonely. He remembered the Grand Priest's words, "We are the hands that serve. Zeno is the light that commands." But what if the light had grown blind? When Whis closed his eyes, he saw the faces of mortals he had watched over, Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, the fragile mortals who had risen beyond destiny through will alone. Goku's voice echoed faintly in his memory. "Doesn't matter how strong you are, Whis, there's always another level if your heart keeps growing." At the time, Whis had laughed softly, amused by the simplicity of the Saiyan spirit. Now those words haunted him. Another level, another evolution, but not of power, of understanding. Mortals grew because they were allowed to fail. Gods did not. Angels could not. And that was the tragedy of perfection, the stillness that killed the spirit.
Deep within the divine palace, the Grand Priest gathered the remaining angels. His expression was calm, but the stillness around him was not peace, it was restraint. Cosmic energies coiled through the chamber like leashed storms. "My children," he began, his voice a melody of absolute command, "there is unrest among our kind." Vados bowed slightly, her silver eyes flickering with uncertainty. "Brother Whis?" "Yes." The name echoed, heavy with consequence. "The king of all senses it. He wonders why the flow of light feels heavy. You will not question him. You will not question me.
The moment of reflection ends here. He looked from face to face, Kus, Vados, Mojito, even the silent twins Campari and Corn. If any angel allows doubt to take form, they will be unmade. The word hung in the air like a blade. But Vados felt something twist inside her, not fear, but sympathy. She had always envied Wiss's quiet warmth toward his universe, toward Beerus, even toward the mortals. To see him condemned for feeling made her realize something unspeakable. She felt, too. The Grand Priest's staff flared, sealing his decree into the fabric of creation. Zeno's balance will not be questioned again. But as he turned away, he felt a faint vibration, a heartbeat, echoing through the multiverse. The rhythm was wrong, the pattern incomplete. He froze. "Impossible," he whispered. "That is mortal rhythm." And he knew Wiss's infection had already spread beyond his reach. In Universe 7, storms of ki began to ripple across reality. Beerus woke abruptly from his rest, his eyes snapping open with fury. "Wiss!" he roared, his aura exploding like purple lightning. Wiss appeared before him instantly, calm and luminous. "What is this disturbance?" Beerus demanded. "The balance is shifting. I can feel it."
Wiss's expression was serene. "Balance, my lord, is not stillness. It is motion." Beerus blinked. "What?" Wiss looked toward the stars, his voice soft but resonant. "The mortals you once saw as fragile are learning faster than we ever imagined. Their energy rises, their hearts evolve. Perhaps they are not beneath us. Perhaps we are the ones who stopped climbing." Beerus's aura flared. "Enough of this nonsense! You sound like a mortal philosopher!" "Perhaps they have something to teach us." The silence that followed was electric. Beerus's tail twitched once, then stilled. For the briefest moment, his rage faltered, because somewhere deep within, he too remembered Goku's smile in battle, that same smile Wiss now carried. Wiss turned, his staff igniting with quiet luminescence. "Lord Beerus, if the gods cannot evolve, then the universes will outgrow them." Beerus growled, stepping forward. "Wiss, what are you planning?" Wiss's eyes softened. "To understand." And with that, he vanished, not through teleportation, not through divine command, but through will. A forbidden act. An angel separating himself from his assigned god. The laws of heaven screamed. Across universes, celestial systems faltered. The Grand Priest's staff cracked with golden fire as he felt the severance. "Wiss," he hissed, the calm in his voice finally breaking. "You have broken the order." The void itself trembled as his power spread like a judgment. But in the distance, far from the reach of any divine realm, Wiss stood upon the edge of an unknown world. His form shimmered, still angelic but changed. He looked into the endless dark and smiled. "If creation fears change, then I shall become its reminder." And for the first time since the beginning of all things, an angel's halo cracked, releasing not light, but color. The hues of mortal soul, the spectrum of imperfection, the dawn of something the cosmos had never seen, an angel becoming free. The heavens shook, and the Grand Priest's eyes filled with dread. The rebellion had begun. The first to notice the fracture was not a god, nor an angel, nor even a mortal, but the void itself. For eons, it had carried the harmony of Zeno's will, resonating with divine order, silent and obedient. But now, it groaned like glass under pressure. Somewhere, within that perfect silence, something living had begun to breathe. Wiss's absence was a wound that no law could seal. The Grand Priest stood upon the pillar of continuum, that ancient place where all divine energy converged, his hands trembling in restrained fury. Around him, the threads of reality pulsed like veins, each connecting to one of the 12 universes. His calm face, once the symbol of unshakable order, flickered with shadow. "Wiss," he whispered, "you have undone what even time feared to touch." He raised his hand. The threads glowed, but the light faltered. The resonance was broken. One universe sang out of tune. 7. The Grand Priest's calm voice echoed through all creation. "Lord Beerus, come." In the Temple of Destruction, Beerus stood atop a jagged spire of black stone, the weight of cosmic dread pressing upon him. The void above him was fractured, colors bleeding through where only darkness should exist. He could feel Wiss's energy still, but distant, altered, as if woven into the very fabric of mortality itself. Wiss's rebellion had become a storm. Beerus growled low. He had fought gods, titans, even the concept of death itself. But this was something beyond destruction. It was meaning, and meaning to him was poison. In a sudden flash of violet flame, he vanished, reappearing at the heart of the Grand Priest's chamber. "You called," Beerus said, folding his arms. The Grand Priest turned, eyes colder than starlight. "Your angel has severed the bond. He walks the mortal plane unbound by divine law." Beerus's jaw clenched. "You think I asked him to?" "I think," the Grand Priest said softly, "that you allowed it."
Beerus's energy flared, shaking the crystalline pillars of the chamber. "Watch your words, old one." "I do not need to watch them," the Grand Priest replied. "I weave them, and right now your universe stands on the edge of erasure." The silence that followed was thick as gravity. Meanwhile, in the mortal realm, Wiss walked across the face of an uncharted world. The skies burned with auroras of red and violet, light twisting into patterns that pulsed like heartbeats. Beneath his feet, the soil was alive with energy, mortal, raw, unrefined. It welcomed him. Every breath he took fed him not with divine power, but with something purer, uncertainty. He looked up at the stars. For the first time, they felt close. "Strange," he murmured, "to feel small again." Around him, life began to stir. Primitive beings emerged from the shadows, curious, fearful, unknowing. They gazed upon him not as a god, but as a question. One reached forward, trembling, its touch leaving a faint pulse of warmth against Wiss's skin. It was imperfect. It was real. A small smile crossed his lips. "Yes," he whispered, "this is what the divine has forgotten." Then the sky split open. From the rift descended 3 beings of light, angels, their halos burning like miniature suns. Vados was among them, her expression torn between sorrow and duty. The others were silent, faceless in the glare of divine radiance. "Wiss," she said softly, her voice trembling in the thin air, "my father commands your return." Wiss turned slowly. His eyes glowed faintly, but not with defiance, with compassion. "And if I refuse? Then your existence ends." He smiled faintly. "Then let it end in truth." Vados hesitated. There was something in her brother's gaze she couldn't bear to meet.
the same warmth that had once guided her through eons of emptiness. Behind her, the other angels raised their staffs, their halos dimmed, focusing into weapons of pure law.
Please, Vados whispered, don't make me choose. You already have. The first strike came like thunder. Space ruptured, folding around the collision of divine energy. Whis blocked it with his staff, the ground beneath them melting into rivers of white light. The mortals screamed, their voices echoing through eternity. Each blow sang with impossible power, creation itself bending at the clash of angels. Yet Whis's strikes were different. His movements no longer followed divine rhythm. They flowed like mortal instinct, unpredictable, emotional, alive. You've lost precision, one angel snarled, their halo sparking violently. No, Whis answered, his voice like wind through broken glass. I've found purpose. He spun, disarming his attacker with a motion that resembled a mortal martial artist more than an angel. The heavens cracked. Vados lunged, their staffs colliding, sparks of gold and azure scattering into the void. Her voice broke. Why, brother? Why throw eternity away? Because eternity without feeling, we said, is another word for death. The blast that followed shattered the skies of 1,000 systems. When the light faded, Whis stood alone, his aura fractured but brighter than ever. The angels retreated, defeated not by strength, but by doubt. Even Vados, as she vanished, whispered a single trembling word. Forgive me. Whis lowered his staff. His breath came slow and heavy, though he did not need air. Around him the mortal world trembled, half destroyed, half reborn. He looked upon its wounded land and whispered, "This is the price of awakening." And in the void above, the grand priest's voice thundered across existence. Whis of Universe 7, you are hereby cast from the order of angels. Your halo is severed, your name erased. You are no longer light. Whis closed his eyes. The halo above his head shattered, not in pain, but in liberation.
His ki changed, fluid, human, radiant. It pulsed with rhythm, with heartbeat, with imperfection. He was no longer an angel. He was something new, something the cosmos could not name. The fall of obedience had begun. The roar of the Grand Priest's decree did not fade. It bled into everything. Stars flickered, galaxies tilted. The rhythm of creation itself wavered. Every universe felt the absence of one name, the loss of one light. Whis was gone. But his fall did not end the silence. It broke it. In the realms of the gods of destruction, confusion rippled like wildfire. The angels, once perfect, mechanical beings of serenity, now looked upon one another with unease. None spoke it aloud, but every divine heart trembled with the same question. Could we fall too? The Grand Priest stood at the center of the multiverse, motionless, his eyes reflecting endless light. Yet behind that radiance, fear flickered, faint, human, and dangerous. For the first time since creation, he did not know what would happen next. Beerus stood upon the balcony of his temple, the universe spread before him in quiet chaos. Meteor storms raged where once balance ruled. Dimensions pulsed with unfamiliar energy. His tail lashed behind him, his claws gripping the railing until it cracked. I warned him, Beerus muttered. I told him not to think. He stared into the darkness, trying to suppress something uncomfortable gnawing at his chest. Regret? No, impossible. Gods of destruction did not regret. Yet the thought persisted. If Whis could disobey, then what am I without him? He remembered all the times Whis had smiled at his anger, all the calm words that had guided him away from extinction's edge. Whis had been more than an attendant. He had been a mirror.
Now that mirror was gone. The silence grew unbearable. Beerus clenched his fists, his aura surging like a violet inferno. Damn you, Whis! You leave and the whole cosmos loses its mind. But even as he cursed, a small, quiet voice, one that did not belong to the god, but the being beneath him, whispered, "Or maybe it's finally waking up." Beerus scowled at the thought, then turned his gaze downward. Earth shimmered faintly in the distance, a blue gem of imperfection. And somewhere there, he felt Goku's ki, pulsing with warmth, steady, as always.
"Mortals," Beerus said softly, "you're trouble even when you're not trying." Then his eyes widened, because within that mortal ki, he sensed something else, something that used to belong to Whis. On Earth, the night sky shimmered like liquid glass. Goku sat cross-legged on a mountaintop, his breathing slow, his aura still. But deep within, a strange rhythm beat in sync with his heart, a melody both foreign and familiar. He opened his eyes. Feels like Whis. Vegeta crossed his arms nearby, his own energy restrained but focused. Whis's power disappeared hours ago. He's gone. "No," Goku said, smiling faintly. "Not gone. Different." Vegeta frowned. "You sound like one of those Earth poets." "Maybe." Goku looked up at the stars. "But I can feel it. He's still out there, and whatever he's doing, it's big." Before Vegeta could reply, the air around them trembled. A soft, shimmering light fell from the heavens, not violent, not divine, but gentle. It touched the earth like rain. Both Saiyans stood still. The energy washed over them, pure but alive. Vegeta gritted his teeth. "This isn't God Ki. It's something else." Goku nodded slowly. "It's like Ultra Instinct, but warmer." They didn't know it yet, but what they were feeling wasn't power. It was Whis's essence, fragments of his freed ki spreading through the mortal realm, resonating with those who had once trained under him. His fall had become their awakening. And far beyond them, deep within the folds of subspace, Whis smiled. He watched through the currents of energy, his eyes soft with wonder. They feel it. Even now the mortals hear the music. The small world he had sheltered, once quiet, now vibrant with life, pulsed with rhythm with his heartbeat. The air shimmered with newborn energy, something between divine and human. It was chaotic, unstable, incomplete, but to Whis, it was perfect.
"Perhaps this is what Zeno feared," he murmured, "a creation that learns to create itself." The Grand Priest's wrath fell upon the cosmos like a storm. He summoned the angels once more, his children, trembling and radiant, kneeling before his throne. His voice was no longer calm. It cracked through space-time, a command forged from desperation. "Bring Whis back to me. If he resists, unmake him." Vados hesitated. "Father, do not speak." The Grand Priest's eyes burned white. "If one seed of rebellion survives, it will spread through eternity. We cannot allow the divine to dream." But even as he spoke, doubt rippled among them. Mojito looked down at his trembling hands. Margarita's halo dimmed. Cus closed her eyes, her heart racing with thoughts she had never dared to think. Maybe he's right. Maybe perfection was never meant to last. The Grand Priest sensed it, and for the first time, he felt fear. Meanwhile, at the edge of all things, Whis sat upon the surface of a calm lake that reflected no stars. Around him drifted particles of golden ki, the residue of fallen halos. He touched the water's surface gently, and the ripples glowed faintly blue.
He could feel the Grand Priest's pursuit drawing closer, but within his heart there was peace. Father seeks to preserve eternity, but eternity has forgotten to live. His staff floated beside him, cracked but still glowing faintly. Within that crystal shimmered visions, flashes of Goku laughing, Vegeta roaring, mortals striving against impossible odds. The light of imperfection. Whis closed his eyes. His ki pulsed once, softly. Across the galaxies, mortals stirred in their sleep, dreaming of stars, of wings, of light. For the first time in cosmic history, the divine and the mortal hearts began to beat in harmony. And somewhere in the emptiness between them, the line between creator and creation blurred. The Grand Priest raised his hand, summoning the full might of the divine order. The heavens darkened. Even Zeno's laughter fell silent. "Enough," the Grand Priest declared. "If my child will not return, then I will erase him myself." And as his hand closed around the fabric of reality, the first crack in eternity widened. The fall of obedience was no longer just Whis' story. It was the story of all who had ever questioned perfection. The story of gods learning to feel. The heavens tore, not metaphorically, not symbolically, but literally. The fabric of reality split like silk beneath the hand of a furious creator. From that wound poured blinding light, not warm or pure, but cold, the sterile radiance of divine correction. The Grand Priest emerged from the breach, his aura an ocean of white flame that devoured sound itself. The multiverse bent around him as he stepped into the mortal dimension where the laws of gods were never meant to tread. All living things, from insects to stars, trembled beneath his presence. And there, standing calmly atop the mirrored lake of the forgotten world, was Whis. No halo, no divine insignia, only stillness. The Grand Priest gazed upon his son, and for a brief human instant, his expression faltered. "You should not exist," he said quietly. Whis' eyes softened. "Perhaps not, but neither should love, and yet here we are." The Grand Priest's face hardened again. "Love is an error. Attachment breeds weakness." "Then perhaps weakness is the path we were meant to walk," Whis replied, his voice steady, his aura flickering like a living flame. "Mortals, gods, they all strive not because they are perfect, but because they are not. You call that imperfection, I call it purpose."
The Grand Priest extended a hand. Space folded. Return to nothing. The world shattered. Every atom screamed as divine law surged through it, trying to erase Whis from existence. The lake beneath him dissolved into energy. Time collapsed into itself. But Whis did not move. His ki surged outward, not cold and precise like an angel's, but wild and human. The Grand Priest's energy met his, colliding in silence so loud it made galaxies tremble. For a moment, there was no father or son, only two wills, one seeking to preserve order, the other to preserve meaning. Whis' body glowed with fractured light, veins of mortal essence running through divine flesh. The Grand Priest struck again, faster than thought, brighter than memory. Whis countered, his movements imperfect but alive, every gesture carrying emotion. It was not a battle of power, it was a battle of truth. The shockwaves reached far beyond. Beerus appeared above the dying world, his aura unstable. "Damn it, Whis, you're going to get us all killed." Behind him, Goku and Vegeta materialized, their eyes wide with awe.
The air around them was thick with godly power, but what they felt went beyond that, something deeper, rawer. Goku took a step forward, clutching his chest. "It's beautiful." Vegeta glared at him. "Beautiful? That's the Grand Priest fighting his own son, you idiot." "I know, but can't you feel it? It's like they're fighting for something, not just to win." Beerus turned, his anger masking unease. "You mortals don't belong here. Leave before you're erased." But Whis' voice, calm, even amid the chaos, echoed through their minds. "Stay." The single word halted Beerus in his tracks. The god of destruction had never disobeyed divine law, yet something in that voice compelled him. It wasn't a command, it was a plea. The Grand Priest's aura flared again. "You bring mortals into this?"
"They are part of it," Whis said, his tone soft but unyielding. "They always were. The moment we touched their worlds, the divine was changed." The Grand Priest's eyes blazed white. "They corrupt everything they touch." Whis smiled faintly. "Then perhaps corruption is just evolution with another name." The Grand Priest's staff erupted in a pillar of light, slicing through dimensions. Whis caught it with his bare hand, the divine weapon burning his skin, the scent of ozone filling the air. Blood, real, mortal blood, dripped from his palm. He looked down at it, almost in wonder. "So this is pain." And he smiled. That smile, gentle, luminous, human, made the Grand Priest hesitate. For the first time in eternity, he saw not an angel, but a soul. Far above, the Omni-King's palace grew silent. The two Zenos stared into the fracture between worlds, their tiny faces frozen in childlike confusion. "Grand Priest is fighting?" one asked. The other nodded. "Why?" "I don't know." Their voices were soft, curious, but beneath that innocence lay a flicker of fear. Because even Zeno, in his omnipotence, could feel it. The universe was thinking. Something ancient and inevitable was awakening, a consciousness beyond command. Back on the battlefield, the Grand Priest pressed his attack, every strike a hymn of annihilation. Whis parried, each motion less divine, more instinctive, more alive. And then it happened. Whis stopped blocking. He let the next blow strike him full across the chest, light tearing through his form. The world beneath them dissolved. "Why?" the Grand Priest demanded, trembling. "Why not resist?"
Whis smiled weakly. "Because resistance is still control. You taught us to obey or to fight, but never to simply be." His body began to fade, dissolving into motes of blue and gold. "But if my death means the universe remembers how to feel, then I have not fallen." The Grand Priest's hand shook, his fury faltered. "My son!" Whis' voice softened into a whisper. "No, father, your creation." He touched his chest, the faint echo of a heartbeat that wasn't supposed to exist, and closed his eyes. Then, in a pulse of light that rippled across all reality, Whis vanished. No explosion, no scream, only warmth. When the light cleared, the Grand Priest fell to his knees. Around him, the lake was gone, replaced by infinite stillness. Yet the silence was different now. It breathed. He looked up. In the heavens above, stars began to flicker back to life, each one glowing with a faint, mortal rhythm. And among them, his son's voice, faint but alive, whispered through the wind.
The divine cannot be destroyed, only remembered. The Grand Priest closed his eyes, tears of light falling onto the void. He had won the battle, but order had lost its meaning. Far away, Goku looked to the sky and smiled sadly. "He's gone," he said, "but I think he's everywhere now." Vegeta said nothing. He simply bowed his head, not in defeat, but in respect. Beerus stood apart, his gaze distant. "Damn fool, you might have been right."
And in the depths of creation, where light and shadow entwined, something new began to stir. Not angel, not mortal, but something in between. The first being of will, the first free God. The fall of obedience was complete. In the silence that followed Whis' disappearance, creation itself seemed to hold its breath. Galaxies drifted slower, suns dimmed, and even the angels, those divine echoes of perfection, found their halos flickering uncertainly. The death of one had not erased order, it had infected it. Across universes, the mortals began to dream. Dreams unlike any before. Visions of blue fire, of wings breaking, of light learning to bleed. Some awoke in terror, others in awe, but all felt the same vibration, an invisible rhythm thrumming through their hearts, as if a forgotten God had whispered directly into their souls. "You are not small, you are the continuation." On Earth, morning light touched the mountains where Goku and Vegeta trained. The wind moved gently between them, carrying the lingering pulse of divine ki. Soft, trembling, alive. Goku sat cross-legged, eyes closed, his aura flickering faintly silver, then gold, then something beyond both. His breath synced with the rhythm of the wind. It was no longer just meditation, it was communion. Vegeta stood nearby, arms folded, watching in silence. He didn't mock, he didn't scowl, not this time. Because even he could feel it. Goku's ki was different, no longer godly, not mortal either. It pulsed with the same strange resonance they had once felt from Whis. After what felt like hours, Goku opened his eyes. The usual spark of playfulness was gone, replaced by quiet clarity. "Vegeta," he said softly. "He's not dead." Vegeta frowned. "You saw him?"
"No," Goku replied. "I felt him. Not out there, though. In here." He tapped his chest. "In every fight, every breath. He's part of everything now." Vegeta turned his gaze skyward. The air was alive with faint motes of light, tiny particles of ki drifting from horizon to horizon, like dust caught in sunlight. "That's not possible," he muttered. "Angels don't become energy. They either exist or they're erased." "Yeah," Goku said, standing, "but Whis was never like the others." Vegeta scowled, though not out of anger. "So what now, Kakarot? You plan to start praying to him?" Goku chuckled. "Nah, I think he'd hate that. But maybe he left us something to find." They didn't have to search for long. When Goku flared his ki, the air rippled. The energy particles around him, remnants of Whis' essence, responded. They shimmered, drawing toward him in spirals, forming patterns that resembled runes of light. "Vegeta," he said quietly, "look!" The symbols glowed brighter, shifting into motion. Not words, memories. A vision unfolded before them. They saw Whis standing before a small mortal child on a distant world, guiding them to stand after falling. He smiled, not with the serenity of an angel, but with the warmth of a teacher who had discovered humility. Then came images of destruction gods hesitating before wiping planets, of Kaioshins pausing to listen to prayers. The ripple had already begun. Whis' fall had changed them all. As the vision faded, Goku exhaled slowly.
He wanted us to see this. Vegeta's eyes narrowed. A message.
More like a challenge, Goku said, his tone calm yet burning with quiet determination. To keep growing, not just stronger, but truer. Vegeta's smirk returned faintly. Always with the philosophy, aren't you? Goku smiled. Guess I learned from the best. Elsewhere, far from Earth, the ripples reached beyond the Saiyans. On Namek, the waters glowed under an unfamiliar light as the Namekians meditated in unison, their voices joining in an ancient chant that had not been heard since before the gods. They spoke not to Kami, not to Porunga, but to the essence of life itself. In Universe 6, Hit paused mid-assassination, his crimson eyes widening as he sensed the flow of time falter for a single heartbeat. Within that instant, he glimpsed a truth he could not describe, a timeline where death was not an end, but a pause. And in Universe 11, Jiren, the stoic warrior of justice, opened his eyes from deep meditation, sweat on his brow. He whispered, "What was that?" For the first time since childhood, he felt something greater than strength. The cosmos was evolving. Mortals, without knowing it, were beginning to resonate with divine frequency. Back in the void between worlds, the Grand Priest watched in silence. His staff flickered erratically, unable to contain the expanding chaos. He had tried to maintain order, to suppress emotion, thought, and change. But now the pattern of creation itself was rewriting. The algorithm of divinity was learning. And the source of this corruption, no, this evolution, was the spark of Whis' consciousness diffused throughout reality. "Whis," the Grand Priest whispered, "you have infected the code of heaven." He looked around. The other angels stood uncertainly behind him, their faces pale. Some avoided his gaze, others trembled. Mojito stepped forward hesitantly. "Father, if the mortals ascend, what becomes of us?" The Grand Priest's grip tightened on his staff. "Then we remind them of their place." "But what if their place," Vados said quietly, "is no longer beneath ours?"
The words hung in the air like blasphemy. The Grand Priest's eyes flashed with cold light. "Enough. Prepare the thrones of judgment. We will reset the mortal realms." The angels obeyed, but their hearts wavered. The seeds of Whis' awakening had reached them too. On Earth, the skies darkened. Goku and Vegeta looked up as the horizon split into geometric lines of light, a divine grid forming around the planet. Vegeta's eyes widened. "That's not natural ki." "No," Goku said softly. "That's them." And above the clouds, 12 halos appeared, spinning, interlocking, forming the seal of divine order. The angels were coming. Goku clenched his fists, his aura beginning to shimmer, blue, then silver, then a new shifting glow. Guess Whis wasn't done teaching us after all. Vegeta smirked. "Then let's show the gods what their children have learned." The mountain beneath them cracked as the two Saiyans rose into the air, their energy merging with the new rhythm that filled the universe. For the first time in history, mortals were no longer beneath the gods. They were the continuation, the next step. And the battle for creation's soul was about to begin. The sky of Earth was no longer blue. It shimmered with patterns of gold and violet, folding and unfolding as if the heavens were breathing. The divine seal hung above the atmosphere, 12 halos rotating in solemn unison, their light casting judgment on the world below. Each halo represented an angel, each light a vow of obedience. And yet as they descended through the veil, their faces carried hesitation. Vados's eyes burned with grief. Mojito's hands trembled slightly around his staff. Even Kus, the youngest, looked away from the mortals below, afraid to see the faces of those who might remind her of her brother's compassion.
At their center hovered the Grand Priest, his expression calm, his presence crushing. "Begin the reset," he commanded. "Mortals who carry the spark of rebellion will be erased." The angels nodded in unison, but as they raised their staffs, a voice broke through the stillness, soft at first, but unyielding. "Stop." Goku's voice echoed across the world. His aura flared, not with divine brilliance, but with raw, beating life. Energy rippled outward like a heartbeat, shaking the air, warping light. His form was neither Ultra Instinct nor Super Saiyan. It was something in between, a state defined not by control, but by harmony. He looked up at the approaching gods and spoke again, his tone quiet, but unwavering. "You don't need to do this." The Grand Priest turned his gaze toward him. "You speak to beings beyond your comprehension, mortal. Your words have no meaning here." Goku smiled faintly. "Funny, Whis used to say the same thing before he started listening." For a moment, the Grand Priest said nothing. He regarded the Saiyan as one might regard a candle defying the sun. Then, slowly, he raised his hand. "Erase him." Before the angels could move, Vegeta stepped forward, his aura bursting into a storm of crimson and indigo flame. The ground cracked beneath his feet as he shouted, "You'll have to get through me first." He launched upward, fists blazing, striking faster than light. The nearest angel parried easily, but Vegeta didn't stop. His rage wasn't wild, it was deliberate, disciplined. Every movement born of a lifetime's refusal to kneel. Blow after blow, he fought not for victory, but for defiance. Goku joined him, their energies intertwining, gold and silver, mortal and divine, chaos and peace. Together they carved light into the air, forcing even the angels to defend rather than attack. Vados hesitated mid-strike, her staff trembling. She saw in them something terrifying, reflection. "They fight like," she whispered, "like Whis." The Grand Priest's voice thundered. "Enough!" His power surged, freezing all motion. The Saiyans hung in midair, their auras flickering under the crushing pressure of divine will. The angels hovered behind him, silent, unable to look.
"Your kind was granted existence to entertain, not to question," he said. "You are temporary, and you will remain so." But as he spoke, the earth itself began to glow. Beneath him, every living being, human, beast, Namekian, Saiyan, android, radiated faint light, not in fear, but in resonance. The mortals of the universe had begun to awaken. A voice whispered through the cosmos, carried on the wind that touched every soul. "You can erase me, Father, but not what I've shared." The Grand Priest froze. That voice. It was Whis, not as a presence, not as a ghost, but as the current of creation itself. His essence had merged with the life force of all mortals, every heartbeat echoing with his consciousness. The stars pulsed, the oceans stilled, even the halos above flickered. Goku smiled, closing his eyes. "Told you he wasn't gone." Vegeta grinned, battered but unbroken. So he really did it. That damned angel actually became everything. The Grand Priest's aura faltered for a fraction of a second, and that was all it took. Goku and Vegeta moved together, faster than thought, their fists colliding with his staff in a shockwave that rippled across dimensions.
For the first time since the dawn of existence, the Grand Priest was forced backwards. But even as he stumbled, his power only grew. "Fools," he said softly, his voice trembling with rage. "You think emotion makes you strong. It makes you fragile. Maybe, but at least it makes us alive." The battle that followed was no longer a fight. It was a storm. Every strike tore through time. Every breath shattered stars. Angels clashed against Saiyans, divine precision against mortal instinct. Yet even as they fell, one by one, none of the angels died. They simply hesitated, halting mid-battle, unsure whether to obey or to feel.
Cuss was the first to lower her staff, then Mojito, then Margarita. Their halos dimmed, their eyes opening as if seeing color for the first time. Vados dropped to her knees, tears of light streaming down her face. "Brother," she whispered into the wind, "your song has reached us." The Grand Priest roared, striking outward, his fury collapsing entire realms. The blast hit Earth, engulfing it in blinding light. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, through the light, two silhouettes emerged. Goku and Vegeta stood side by side, their forms surrounded by flowing, living ki. Their energy shimmered in hues never seen before, the same shifting gold and azure that once danced within Whis' aura. They had touched it, the next evolution. "Father," came Whis' voice again, echoing through them both, "this is the future, not of gods, but of souls." The Grand Priest's expression broke. For the first time in eternity, he looked uncertain. The halos above the planet began to crumble, one by one, until only his remained, burning faintly against the vastness of the sky. Below, mortals lifted their eyes to the heavens, not in worship, but in understanding. They did not kneel, they did not beg, they simply stood. The Grand Priest lowered his staff. The battle had ended, not with defeat, but with silence. In that silence, the children of mortality had claimed their place among the stars. Goku looked at Vegeta, smiling faintly. "Guess we did it." Vegeta scoffed. "Don't get sentimental. We just survived." But even he couldn't hide the small flicker of pride in his eyes, not for himself, but for all those who had finally learned to rise. The Grand Priest turned away, vanishing into light. Yet his last words lingered in the air, like a warning, or perhaps an admission. "Then let us see what mortals make of eternity."
And somewhere, far beyond the veil of the living, Whis' laughter echoed softly, serene, unburdened, infinite. The angels had fallen. But from their fall, creation had learned to stand. The age of gods was ending. The age of souls had begun. The world was quiet again, but it was not the same quiet that once belonged to the gods. It was the stillness after revelation, the hush that comes when every soul, mortal, divine, and forgotten, realizes it is no longer bound by a single will. The skies above Earth still shimmered with remnants of divine light, but their hue had changed. Once sterile and perfect, now they pulsed with living rhythm, like veins carrying the heartbeat of a newborn universe. Goku and Vegeta floated high in the air, their auras subdued but steady, their eyes reflecting the horizon where dawn met eternity. Around them, fragments of the shattered divine grid drifted downward like feathers of light. Each fragment carried faint whispers, echoes of angels rediscovering something they had long abandoned, the right to feel. Vegeta exhaled slowly. "So, that's it, then. The gods failed and mortals inherit the ashes. Goku shook his head. No, nobody failed. We just remembered. Remembered what? Goku's gaze softened. That everything grows, even perfection. Far above them, beyond dimensions, the Grand Priest returned to the Hall of Zeno. The light there had dimmed. The twin Zenos sat silently on their thrones, no longer giggling, no longer erasing. They watched him with eyes that seemed smaller now, more like frightened children. "Father," one of them said softly, "why did the stars change color?" The Grand Priest knelt before them, his hands trembling as he gripped his staff. "Because," he whispered, "the mortals have learned to sing." The words carried weight, ancient and terrible. In the silence that followed, even the divine clockwork of the palace seemed to slow. One Zeno tilted his head. "Can they stop?"
The Grand Priest looked down, his reflection fractured across the mirrored floor. "No, my lord, they cannot. Once consciousness expands, it does not return to sleep." The Zeno said nothing more. Their tiny forms glimmered faintly, not with omnipotence, but with confusion, perhaps even sorrow. And for the first time since the beginning, the Grand Priest understood. The King of all was not truly infinite. He was alone. Meanwhile, the angels scattered. Some returned to their universes, their halos dimmed and cracked, no longer glowing with blind devotion, but with quiet purpose. Others wandered among the stars, curious to see the mortals they had once considered fragile. Vados descended upon a barren moon, kneeling in solitude. She held her staff to her chest and whispered into the void, "Brother, your light lingers. I can feel it every time I hesitate." Mojito traveled to a planet consumed by war, healing children without command or reward. Cuss stood by a dying sun and wept for no reason she could explain. They were no longer perfect, and in their imperfection, they became real. The cosmos itself was changing. Divine law softened. Worlds long forgotten began to bloom again. Time moved differently now, not in straight lines, but in spirals, like music, repeating but never quite the same. Back on Earth, Goku and Vegeta landed on a quiet field at the edge of West City. The air smelled of smoke and spring. Bulma ran toward them, tears streaking her face, Trunks and Pan close behind. Krillin, Gohan, and Piccolo followed, their eyes wide with questions, but their hearts too full for words. Goku grinned, scratching the back of his head. "Heh, sorry about the mess." Bulma punched his shoulder lightly. "You broke half the sky, Goku." "Yeah, but it's prettier now, isn't it?" he replied with that same boyish laugh that somehow always carried peace after storms. Vegeta rolled his eyes but said nothing. He looked up instead, to where the last trace of divine gridlight faded into starlight. "He did it," he murmured, more to himself than anyone. "The fool actually did it." Gohan stepped closer. "Whis?" Vegeta nodded slowly. "He changed everything." Goku smiled. "Nah, he just reminded us we could."
As night fell, the stars burned brighter than ever before. Each shimmer carried faint ripples of energy, whispers of the divine and now woven into mortal life. No longer separate, no longer superior. Piccolo stood apart, his voice low. "So what happens now? If gods can fall, who keeps balance?" Goku looked up at the sky, his expression thoughtful. "Maybe that's not the point anymore. Maybe balance isn't something to keep. Maybe it's something to live." Vegeta crossed his arms.
You're starting to sound like a Kaioshin. Goku laughed, maybe, or maybe they'll start sounding like us. For a long moment, no one spoke. The breeze moved gently through the grass, carrying the scent of earth and ozone. It was the smell of a world reborn. In the silence of the night, far beyond the reach of any god or mortal, the remnants of Whis' essence drifted like a constellation. The particles pulsed faintly, forming the outline of a familiar figure, serene, smiling, infinite. His voice echoed faintly, soft as the hum of creation itself. They will stumble, they will fall, but they will rise again, not because they are commanded to, but because it is in their nature to seek the light. The stars pulsed in response, as if bowing to the voice. And across every universe, every being who once sought power began to feel something new within them, a quiet strength that did not burn, but glowed. A memory of Whis' final lesson. The purpose of creation is not perfection, it is participation. Goku sat beneath the stars long after the others had gone. The wind was cool, the world still. He closed his eyes and smiled. Hey, Whis, if you can hear me, thanks for everything. Somewhere in the night, the leaves rustled. For an instant, he felt a familiar hand rest gently on his shoulder. Then, it was gone. He opened his eyes, and for the first time, he didn't look up toward heaven. He looked straight ahead, toward the horizon.
Because that's where destiny waited now. Not above, not below, but within. The light of the angels had fallen, but from their fall, mortals had risen. They were no longer guided by perfection. They were guided by possibility. And as the stars burned brighter, the universe exhaled, not in command, but in peace. For the first time since eternity began, the grand priest dreamed. It was not the serene slumber of gods, nor the suspended stillness of angels. It was something human. His dream was noise, color, emotion, memory. He stood upon a vast ocean made of reflections, a sea of all his children, all his choices, all his regrets. The waves whispered his name, not in reverence, but in accusation. And above him, Zeno's childish laughter echoed faintly, breaking and reforming like glass. You built them to obey, the laughter sang, but they learned to be. The grand priest reached toward the sound, but his hand passed through empty air. The laughter faded, replaced by a whisper from below, familiar, haunting. Father, do you know who you really serve? He woke in silence. The chamber of Zeno was empty. The twin thrones sat vacant, their tiny owners nowhere to be found. The light that once filled the room was dim and cold. The grand priest stood alone, his reflection fractured across the crystalline floor. He felt the weight of creation pressing upon him, not from above, but from within. Every atom, every law of existence hummed with imperfection, with Whis. He looked down at his trembling hands. He murmured, "So it has come to this. The design questions its designer."
Behind him, a faint shimmer. Vado stepped into the chamber, silent, her once perfect posture slightly bent, as if carrying unseen grief. "Father," she said softly, "the Zenos are gone." "I know." They vanished the moment Whis' essence spread through the cosmos,
The erasure commands stopped. He closed his eyes. Then balance has collapsed. Vados hesitated, then stepped closer. No, balance has evolved. The Grand Priest turned sharply, his expression unreadable. What did you say? Whis' will echoes in mortals, in angels, even in the void. The fabric of creation is changing, Father. It no longer responds to your command alone. The Grand Priest studied her for a long moment, then sighed, the sound ancient and weary. You speak like him now. Perhaps because I finally understand him. He turned away, walking toward the twin thrones. You think I do not understand my son's intentions? You think I did not see this possibility when I shaped him? Vados's eyes widened. You foresaw this? The Grand Priest rested his hand upon one of the empty thrones. Of course I did. I built perfection, knowing that one day perfection would collapse, because that collapse is the only true test of creation. Vados's breath caught. Then Whis' rebellion was not rebellion. It was evolution by design. His voice was calm, but there was sorrow beneath it, a sorrow so deep it warped the air around him. He turned to her, and in his gaze she saw the burden of eternity. You see, my daughter, even gods need meaning. Zeno was born from pure will, omnipotent but empty. His laughter was not joy, it was loneliness echoing through infinity. He created me to fill the void with structure.
He paused, his tone softening to a whisper. And I created all of you to fill mine. The words struck Vados like lightning. She took a step back. You mean we were never guardians of balance? He smiled faintly. No, you were guardians of my sanity. The silence that followed was unbearable. Vados's eyes trembled with something she had never felt toward her father before, pity. Then what of Whis? She asked quietly. Why was he different? The Grand Priest's expression softened. Because he was the first one I made, when I still believed in love. The words shattered the illusion of godhood like a crystal breaking under breath. For a long time, neither spoke. The vast chamber, once the center of all creation, felt small, human. Finally, Vados found her voice. You loved him. I loved what he represented, the Grand Priest said, the potential to create beyond command. I made him curious, gentle, kind, everything the heavens lacked. And when Zeno noticed, he feared him. So he bound all angels with obedience, using my code to silence the soul I had given him. Vados's voice quivered, and when Whis broke free of that code, I knew, the Grand Priest whispered, that the end had begun. He turned toward the empty thrones again, his reflection fractured in the polished floor. The Zenos thought they ruled the multiverse, but they were only masks, vessels for the law of existence itself. And that law, Vados, he looked up, his eyes distant, that law is dying. Vados's heart pounded, another sensation angels were never meant to know. Then what will happen to us? The Grand Priest smiled sadly. That depends on the mortals. They are the new architects now, the children of consciousness. He walked past her, his footsteps soundless. But before they rise, they must understand the cost of freedom. Without order, creation devours itself. Without will, it stagnates. They must learn balance, not through obedience, but through compassion.
He stopped at the doorway. I will give them that chance.
Vados frowned. "What do you mean?" He turned to her one last time, his silhouette framed by the dying light of Zeno's chamber. Whis thought he ended the age of gods. He was wrong. I will end it myself. The chamber darkened. The halos of all remaining angels flickered violently. "Father," Vados whispered in terror, "what are you doing?" The grand priest raised his staff. The entire multiverse began to tremble. "Resetting creation," he said softly, "but not to erase it, to remake it, to give them the freedom he dreamed of without losing the light that birthed it." Vados fell to her knees. "You'll destroy yourself." He smiled faintly. "Perhaps that too is evolution." The staff ignited, radiating with both divine law and mortal resonance. Whis' essence intertwined within it. Across the cosmos, stars flared brighter, universes shook, time folded inward. Every soul, mortal and divine alike, heard the same voice, vast and tender. "Let there be will, let there be wonder, let there be choice." And as the multiverse dissolved into light, Vados screamed her father's name, but her voice was lost in the brilliance. When the light faded, nothing remained of the old order. Not Zeno, not the grand priest, not the angels as they once were. Only possibility. And somewhere in that possibility, a single heartbeat echoed. Neither divine nor mortal, but something in between. The heartbeat of a new creation. Light. Endless, blinding light. It wasn't destruction, it was awakening.
The multiverse unfolded like a dream, remembering itself. The ancient boundaries between gods and mortals dissolved, replaced by a spectrum of pure potential. Stars pulsed like neurons in the brain of creation. Planets sang. Time breathed. And in the center of it all, within that radiant chaos, something began to take shape. Not a person, not a god, but a presence. It was him, the grand priest, or what remained of him. His form shimmered in fragments, made of memory and law. His once perfect robes now trailed into starlight. His voice echoed not in sound, but in every mind that had ever prayed, thought, or dreamed. "Do not fear the silence," he whispered across eternity, "for silence is where new music begins." His consciousness stretched across all realities. He saw Goku laughing with his friends beneath the reformed sky. He saw Vegeta teaching Trunks how to feel the rhythm of ki instead of forcing it. He saw universes where mortals discovered energy without violence, technology without greed, faith without fear. It was working. The reset wasn't an erasure, it was renewal. But something was wrong. Beneath the harmony, beneath the brilliance of rebirth, a darker current stirred, a pulse of rejection, a remnant of the old law refusing to die. The grand priest turned his gaze toward it. And there, at the farthest edge of all that existed, beyond the reach of Whis' song, beyond mortal thought, a void pulsed like a wound. Within that void, two lights flickered, twin orbs of power, small yet immeasurable, the Zenos, or rather, what they had been. Their laughter was gone, replaced by a single emotion that no god should have ever known. Fear. "We are fading," one whispered, voice trembling like a broken child.
The other nodded, his form glitching between matter and memory. He took everything, the control, the code, even our voice. They looked into the darkness around them. Where once their word had birthed universes, now only silence answered. What are we without order? The other smiled faintly, a flicker of childish cruelty mixed with sadness. Nothing. And in that nothingness their fear became something else, hunger. The Grand Priest felt it, a ripple of distortion cutting through his newborn cosmos. He focused, reaching through light and time, tracing the pulse of corruption back to its source. The void responded. From the depths emerged a shape, small, childish, but radiating malevolence. It was Zeno reborn, stripped of laughter and innocence, his eyes dark with resentment. "You made me lonely," the voice whispered, echoing like a scream trapped in a dream. "You made them forget me." The Grand Priest felt sorrow, not fear. "You were never meant to be eternal. Even creation must sleep." "I was the end," Zeno roared, "and you gave them beginnings." The void trembled. Every newborn star flickered, as if the universe itself held its breath. Zeno's small body began to twist, his aura turning black and violet. The essence of negation, pure erasure, awakened again, now unchained from innocence. "I will erase your will, and all their dreams with it." The Grand Priest extended his hand, light gathering around him like a shield. "Then I will face you, not as your servant, but as your creation." The clash was silent, but reality screamed. Darkness met light, law met love, eternity met change.
Across galaxies, mortals felt tremors in their souls, nightmares of flickering stars, whispers of voices too vast to name. Even Goku woke in the night, clutching his chest, feeling something ancient pulling at his heart. "Whis," he murmured, gazing toward the heavens. "Something's wrong." Vegeta appeared beside him, his aura crackling faintly. "You feel it too?" "Yeah." Goku clenched his fists. "It's like the universe is fighting itself." Vegeta's eyes narrowed. "Then we fight with it." The Grand Priest's light began to dim. Zeno's power was primal, not intelligence, not will, but the raw instinct to end. Every act of love, every spark of hope fed the creature's hunger, because to him, creation was betrayal. "You made them free," Zeno hissed, "but freedom is noise, chaos. You gave them the disease of choice." "And you," the Grand Priest replied calmly, "were the silence that forgot to listen." Zeno lunged. The impact sent fissures through reality. Universes shattered like glass, their fragments spinning outward as potential, not death. The Grand Priest faltered, his form splintering. He could not win by force. That era was gone. So he reached deep into himself, into the memory of his first creation, his son. "Whis," he whispered, "show me the way." Across all planes of existence, the rhythm returned. Soft at first, a hum, a breath, a heartbeat. Then voices. Billions of them, mortals praying, laughing, crying, angels singing, worlds blooming. Their collective will rose like a tide, joining the Grand Priest's fading light. He felt Whis's essence in every voice, every pulse, every soul. Together, they became one. And when Zeno's darkness struck again, it met not law, not command, but unity.
The light of creation erupted, weaving through every realm. Zeno screamed as his essence was absorbed, not erased, transformed. His darkness became color, his void became depth, his erasure became rest.
The grand priest stood in the center of it all, trembling, smiling through tears of light. "Now you understand," he whispered. "Even endings have purpose." Zeno's small form dissolved, his eyes softening with something like peace. "Then let me sleep." And the void went still. When the light cleared, the grand priest floated alone among the stars. Not a god now, but a soul. His staff had crumbled to dust, his halo was gone. Yet for the first time in all existence, he felt free. He looked out at the vast cosmos, reborn, imperfect, alive, and whispered, "Whis, they will carry it forward." And somewhere, in the gentle hum of creation, a familiar voice replied, "They already are, Father." The grand priest closed his eyes. The light faded into warmth. The battle was over, but the story, the true story of existence, was only beginning. The secret had been revealed. The gods were never meant to rule. They were meant to teach the universe how to choose.
He saw it all, the web of life expanding again, now untethered from his law. Each thread, every mortal soul, every wandering god, every lost angel shimmered with autonomy. They moved with purpose, but not command. They were alive in the truest sense. And in that infinite vision, the grand priest finally understood what Whis had meant when he said, "Perfection without love is a cage." He whispered softly, his voice scattering like dust through stars, "So this was your lesson all along, my son." Back on Earth, the sky shimmered with new constellations, unfamiliar shapes, glowing in colors humanity had never seen. People looked upward, some with awe, some with tears, sensing without understanding that the heavens themselves had changed. On Mount Paozu, Goku sat quietly beneath a tree, eyes half closed, body still as stone. A breeze brushed through the leaves, and with it came a whisper, faint, melodic, not of words but of feeling. He smiled. He did it, didn't he? Vegeta stood nearby, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The old man finally learned what Whis tried to teach him. Goku tilted his head. "You mean love?" Vegeta scowled, though there was no anger in it. "No. Responsibility. The strength to let go." For a moment, the two Saiyans stood in silence. The air around them vibrated faintly with a gentle hum, the lingering heartbeat of the grand priest's final act. Goku looked up at the sky, his voice low. "You feel that, Vegeta? It's like the universe is breathing again." Vegeta closed his eyes. "Yeah, and for once, it's not telling us what to do." In the divine realms, what remained of them, the angels stirred from their long silence. Vados stood before a great mirror of light, her reflection flickering between what she had been and what she was becoming. Her halo had dimmed, now a faint band of energy hovering behind her head like a setting sun. She touched her reflection gently. "Father," she whispered. And the mirror rippled, revealing not a face, but a light, soft, warm, infinite.
"Vados," came the grand priest's voice, echoing not from above, but within her. "Do not mourn what was. Creation does not die. It changes." Tears glimmered in her eyes. "Then you're still with us?" "Always. But not as a god, as the wind that moves your thoughts, as the courage that makes you hesitate before judgment, as the silence between breaths." Vados smiled through her tears. "And Whis, he walks beside the mortals now, unseen but not unfelt. His song guides the pulse of their hearts." The mirror faded, leaving her alone in the gentle radiance of rebirth.
She fell to her knees, not in worship, but in gratitude. And across the multiverse, other angels felt it too, a lightness, a clarity, the quiet certainty that they no longer existed to obey, but to understand. In a quiet pocket of the newly formed cosmos, where stars were still being born, the remnants of Zeno's essence drifted, small, silent, at peace. From that soft darkness came a voice. "Are you still afraid?" The voice belonged to Whis, not in body, but in vibration. His consciousness spread across the universe. Zeno's light flickered softly. "I don't know what I am." "You are the memory of endings," Whis said gently, "and even endings have a place." Zeno's light dimmed further. "Then what will I do?" "Rest, watch, dream." For the first time since the beginning, the being that had erased creation closed his eyes and dreamed not of control, but of possibility. On Earth, months passed. Life resumed, quietly changed. Children were born with deeper eyes. Artists painted constellations they had never seen before. And martial artists spoke of ki that responded not to anger nor calm, but to truth.
And every so often, when night fell perfectly still, the wind carried laughter, light, musical, unmistakably his. One evening, as dusk settled over the horizon, Goku stood alone by the sea. The water shimmered with faint trails of silver, the reflection of the new stars above. He clasped his hands behind his head, smiling faintly. "Whis, wherever you are, I think we finally get it now." The waves murmured softly. He continued, voice quiet, almost childlike. "It's not about power, or fighting, or being the best. It's about moving forward, even when you don't know why." A soft light shimmered above the waves, forming briefly into the outline of a tall figure with calm eyes and a staff made of starlight. "Then my work," the figure said gently, "is done." Goku turned, smiling. "Hey, Whis." But before he could say more, the image faded, dissolving into the night air. Vegeta approached from behind, his arms crossed. "Talking to ghosts again? Kakarot?" Goku chuckled. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just listening." Vegeta looked out over the sea. The horizon was golden, the stars endless. "Then keep listening. Something tells me the story isn't over." Goku nodded, his eyes full of quiet wonder. "Yeah, I think you're right." Far above, in the tapestry of stars, the cosmos shimmered, not in divine perfection, but in living imperfection. Every atom, every breath, every choice pulsed with the echo of what the Grand Priest had finally understood. That creation was never meant to be a command. It was meant to be a conversation. And so the universe spoke, in dreams, in battles, in silence. And for the first time in all eternity, the divine listened. The universe was reborn, but rebirth is never without shadow.
In the quiet centuries that followed the Great Reset, creation flourished like a dream unbound. Planets healed, civilizations rose without divine decree, and even the stars seemed to hum in contentment. Yet beneath the harmony, a new pulse began to beat, faint, restless, questioning. For where there is freedom, there will always be fear, and where there is light, shadow remembers its shape. The Saiyans were the first to notice. It began as whispers in meditation, echoes that didn't belong. Goku would close his eyes to train, to listen to the universe's rhythm, and between the breaths of silence, he would hear something else, a second heartbeat. Not Whis, not the Grand Priests, something older. "Feels strange one night," he murmured, sitting alone on the cliffside beneath a violet moon. Like the universe is remembering something it shouldn't. Behind him, Vegeta's aura flared faintly as he descended from the sky. You feel it too? Goku nodded. It's deep. Not bad, just heavy. Vegeta crossed his arms. You're too naive. Nothing that hides in silence is harmless. Every time gods fall, something crawls out from the space they leave behind. Goku looked thoughtful. Maybe, or maybe it's just another kind of growth. But even as he said it, he could feel the truth pulsing at the edge of his mind, like the echo of a scream too ancient to remember. In a distant part of the cosmos, where stars still formed from dust, Vados drifted among newborn suns. She had long abandoned her title as angel, now simply a wanderer, a teacher to worlds not yet awake. She closed her eyes, feeling the rhythm of creation move through her, the breath of Whis' dream. But suddenly her serenity faltered. A dissonance rippled through the light, faint but undeniable. Her staff materialized in her hand, glowing faintly. It had not answered her call since the fall of the old order. Now it pulsed with warning. No, she whispered. It cannot be. She focused her sight beyond the visible, into the hidden dimensions between light and thought. There, in the folds of reborn creation, something was gathering, a shape made of absence, feeding on memory, forming from the fragments of everything that once obeyed.
Order itself was returning. The phenomenon spread quietly. Across galaxies, beings began to dream the same dream, a cold palace of lightless glass, a throne suspended in nothing, and a voice whispering, "Remember who you were." At first, the mortals thought it was an illusion, remnants of divine memory dissolving, but the dreams grew stronger, clearer, commanding. Some began to build temples again, others began to pray. Not to Whis, not to Zeno, to the voice in the void. The universe, once free, was beginning to crave chains again. Goku trained harder, driven by an unease he couldn't name. The air around him would sometimes shimmer with static, and when he struck, the echoes of his blows would linger, distorted, hollow, unnatural. One night, during meditation, his consciousness slipped beyond his body, a skill Whis had once taught him but warned him never to abuse. He drifted through the void, following the dissonance he had felt for months. And there, in the dark between galaxies, he saw it. A throne of obsidian light, and sitting upon it, a figure. Small, childlike, familiar. Zeno. But not the one he remembered. This Zeno's eyes were voids, his smile carved from sorrow. "Son Goku, you have built a world without me." Goku hovered in silence, unsure whether to speak. "You're not him. You're what's left."
The voice laughed, cold, echoing. Leftovers still hunger. The mortals dream of me because they want to be told who they are. They fear choice. They long for the comfort of command. Goku's aura flickered. That's not true. People are learning. They're better now. Are they? The shadow asked. They build order again. They maimed their laws after gods. They are writing my return with their fear. The void around them pulsed, millions of faint lights, each representing a world remembering submission. The being's eyes narrowed. I do not need to exist to rule. They will resurrect me themselves. Goku clenched his fists. Not if I can help it. Zeno's voice softened, almost gentle. You cannot fight what they wish for, Goku.
You can only watch as they rebuild the chains I once gave them." And before Goku could answer, the void collapsed inward, pulling him back into his body. He awoke gasping, his hands trembling. Vegeta was already there, watching. "You saw it too." Goku nodded slowly. "He's not gone. Not really. Just waiting for us to forget." Vegeta's gaze hardened. "Then we'll remind the universe what freedom feels like." But across the stars, whispers continued. Dreams deepened. Temples rose again. And within that growing darkness, a quiet smile spread through the void, patient, inevitable. For even after the gods had fallen, humanity still looked upward, and every upward gaze was a door. In the mortal world, Gohan gathered the new generation, warriors, scholars, mystics, to prepare for what was coming. He spoke of the old days, of gods and angels, of Whis and his lesson of choice. But as he looked into the faces of those who listened, he felt a chill. Their eyes glowed faintly, the same hue that once surrounded Zeno's throne.
The cycle was beginning again. At the edge of the cosmos, Vados whispered to the wind, "Father, you gave them freedom, but even freedom casts a shadow." And in the distance beyond stars, a faint, unseen echo answered her, "Then the light must learn to live with it." The universe trembled, not in fear, but in preparation. The final chapter of creation was about to begin. Not a war of gods and mortals, but of will and memory. The battle for the meaning of freedom itself. The universe had no center anymore, but the conflict that was coming would make one. Across countless worlds, whispers became chants. Chants became faith. Faith became law. And law, once again, began to strangle the very freedom that birthed it. Mortals, afraid of the endless sky, began to build order to protect themselves from the silence. They sought meaning in old shapes, and somewhere in that yearning, the shadow of Zeno grew stronger. He did not need to rise. They were raising him. On Earth, the nights grew longer. Not darker, longer. Time itself stretched, bent by the pull of something unseen. Goku and Vegeta stood at the edge of a ruined temple in the North Mountains, one that hadn't existed a month ago. Its walls were carved from obsidian that glimmered faintly with ki, and its altar bore the symbol of the twin thrones. "This wasn't built by gods," Vegeta muttered, running his hand along the stone. "Mortals did this. Humans." Goku nodded slowly. "Yeah, it's like they're remembering things they shouldn't even know." He knelt, placing his palm against the ground. The ki of the place pulsed, cold, steady, obedient. "It's alive. Feels like it's listening." Vegeta's aura flickered. "Then it's time someone told it to stop."
They both powered up, not with rage, but resolve. Their energies merged, golden and silver, vibrating in harmony. The temple shook, its stones screaming as they cracked. But before it could collapse completely, a voice filled the air. Soft, ancient, too familiar. "You cannot destroy what they desire." The ground froze. The air grew heavy. The sky itself dimmed. From the shattered altar rose a form of light, the childlike figure of Zeno, but made entirely of reflection. His eyes were mirrors, showing every fear, every wish, every god mortals had ever imagined. "Even in freedom," the being said, "they still long to bow."
Goku took a step forward. If they remember the old ways, we'll teach them new ones. The reflection tilted its head. And when they forget again? Vegeta's voice was cold. Then we'll remind them again. That's what it means to be alive. The being smiled sadly. Then you have learned nothing, Saiyan. Life does not move in lines. It moves in circles. Every light casts the same shadow, again and again. He extended a small hand and the world inverted. The mountains vanished. Earth disappeared. Goku and Vegeta stood in the middle of the void, the space between existence and idea. All around them, infinite copies of creation flickered like mirrors, each one showing a different timeline, a different version of what could be. In one, Whis never rebelled. In another, Beerus erased everything. In a third, Goku sat alone beneath a dead sky. This is what freedom breeds, said the reflection. Infinite choice, infinite chaos, endless noise. Vegeta snarled. You call that chaos? I call it living. Do you? The reflection's voice softened. Then show me. Which life would you choose?
Before they could answer, the mirrors expanded, surrounding them. Each one reflected a different self, stronger, weaker, older, colder. Goku saw himself as a god, his smile gone, his eyes hollow. Vegeta saw himself as a destroyer, immortal but alone. The reflection's voice echoed from all sides. Choice is the greatest prison because it makes you believe you are free. Goku clenched his fists. You're wrong. Choice is freedom. It's the reason we fight, the reason we grow. And yet you always return to war, the shadow whispered. Always to violence, to power, to the same endless hunger. Vegeta's aura flared crimson. Then maybe that's our curse and our gift. He shattered the nearest mirror with a single strike. The explosion rippled through the void, fracturing reality itself. Goku followed, striking in rhythm, each blow like a heartbeat. You call it noise, I call it song! The reflection screamed, its voice turning into 1,000 overlapping whispers. Foolish mortals, you think defiance will save you? You are made of my memory. Then you'll remember this, Goku Horde. Their combined energy erupted, not as a beam, not as destruction, but as radiance. The same light that Whis had carried, that the Grand Priest had given his life to protect. The mirrors shattered. The void began to dissolve. When the light faded, they found themselves back upon Earth. The temple was gone, reduced to dust that shimmered faintly in the wind. The stars above were brighter, but some were red now, pulsing slowly, like eyes watching from afar. Vegeta wiped his brow. We didn't kill it. Goku nodded. No, but we made it remember what it used to be. What's that? Just a voice in the dark.
Elsewhere, across the multiverse, the reflection's remnants drifted like smoke. Each fragment found a world, a heart, a prayer, and there it waited, silent, patient. Because shadow, like memory, never truly dies. Vados watched from a distant world, her staff glowing faintly. She had felt the clash, the ripples of will echoing through the layers of existence. She closed her eyes, whispering into the stars. Whis, the mortals are learning, but the cycle still turns. And from the wind came a voice, soft, smiling, eternal. Then let them turn, sister. The circle is not a curse. It is the rhythm of becoming. Back on Earth, dawn rose. The light stretched across the sea, golden and new. Goku stood at the shore, his reflection trembling upon the water's surface. For a moment, he thought he saw something beneath it, not a shadow, but a second sun. He smiled. Guess even the dark gets a second chance. Vegeta walked past him, smirking.
Don't get philosophical on me now, Kakarot. Goku laughed. I'm just saying, maybe that's what Whis wanted. Not to destroy the darkness, but to teach the light how to dance with it. Vegeta paused, looking out at the horizon. Maybe. The wind shifted, gentle, warm, carrying faint echoes of laughter. In the end, no gods remained, no angels, no thrones, only choice, imperfect, beautiful, eternal. And from that choice, the universe continued, ever walking the fine line between light and shadow. Because the story of creation was never about gods or power, it was about what comes after both. And in that endless dawn, as stars hummed like memories, the voice of Whis whispered one last time, "The divine was never above you, it was waiting within."